The commander of troops for this evening is Lieutenant Colonel Todd Burrows, Commander, 4th Battalion, 3rd United States Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard. Our host for this evening is General Mark A. Milley, 39th Chief of Staff, United States Army. General Milley is deferring honors to our salute from the Chief Honoree, Senator John S. McCain of Arizona. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as honors are rendered. Please remain standing as the band plays a musical medley consisting of Anchors Aweigh, the United States Navy song, Blue and Gold, the Naval Alma Mater, and the Arizona March Song in honor of Senator McCain's distinguished service to the nation as both a naval officer and United States Senator.
Present arms.
Please be seated.
Step left, face. Ceremonial, and E. And one, and two. Step, ceremonial, and E.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Salute from the Chief, a tribute to those who have made exceptional voluntary contributions to our soldiers, families, and the United States Army. Our host for today's ceremony is the Chief of Staff of the Army, General Mark A. Milley. Ladies and gentlemen, General Milley.
I want to welcome everyone here tonight, and I just don't know how many more times I can listen to Anchors Away. Go Army, beat Navy. Where's the Secretary of the Navy? Where you at? I know you're up here somewhere. There you are. So God bless the Navy, and we're here to celebrate and honor the life of one of the greatest persons that I know today in public life, and that's Senator John S. McCain. And yes, he's a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, but as far as I'm concerned, he's also a graduate of the Air Force Academy, the United States Military Academy at West Point. He's a Marine, he's a sailor, he's an airman, and he's a soldier. And he does every one of us proud day in and day out, and he has for his entire life. So thank you all for being here to honor Senator McCain. And I want to particularly thank Senator Reid for being here. We have several other senators and congressmen here. Thank you all for being here. We have service secretaries for the Navy and the Air Force as well, and we have our own acting Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, who's been my wingman now for several months, and he's just doing a great job, and I appreciate all the service secretaries for being here. Mrs. Holly Petraeus is here tonight. Thank you for not only representing your husband, who has done so much for our nation in his own right, but what you have done for our nation in your own right. So thank you, Holly, for being here as well. And Ambassador Newland is here. Thank you. And there are lots of general officers, sergeants majors, and many, many distinguished guests. And as far as I'm concerned, every single person in this room tonight is a distinguished guest and a friend and a colleague, a supporter, and an admirer of Senator McCain. So thank you all for being here. And most importantly, thanks to the soldiers that are on this field tonight, on this gym floor tonight. They are from the Old Guard, from the 3rd United States Infantry, or Pershing Zone, from the Army Band, and the Salute Battery. And the show that you'll see after we render honors to Senator McCain is completely put on by soldiers of the Old Guard. And they represent, in my view, all that is good about America. Those that wear the cloth of our nation are a special breed, and they are people who have taken the oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And they do so at the risk of their life or their limb, and they do it to protect America and its people, whether it's in Europe or Asia, in the sands of the Middle East, whether it's on the oceans or in the skies. Every single one who wears the cloth of our country, represented by these soldiers here tonight, represents all that is good about the youth and the adults of our great country. So thank you to the Old Guard. Now but a round of applause. So there are some in the audience who may ask, how did a Naval Academy graduate and a career naval officer earn a salute from the Chief of Staff of the United States Army? And I'll admit that I've cracked a few jokes about the Navy, My mother was in the Navy. My dad fought with the 4th Marine Division. So I come out of the naval service, and wisely I chose the Army. But I will never, ever look down at the Navy. I've always considered the Navy as a great alternative to military service. So, sorry, Secretary. Sorry. But tonight, yes, beat Army. So, but tonight, hey, look at tonight. We're not here to make jokes about the Navy. We're here to honor an American patriot, a true American legend, one who has demonstrated extraordinary service to our nation and its people through a life both in and out of uniform, Senator John McCain, a fighter, a patriot, a national treasure. This is a man who has been and continues to be a champion for our national defense and for our Army. It's truly my honor and the honor of the entire United States Army to salute you, Senator, this evening. John McCain comes from a family dedicated to service. Both his grandfather and father, Slew McCain, grandfather, and Jack McCain, his father, were Navy admirals. Slew McCain fought in some of the greatest naval battles of World War II and in worldwide naval history. And his father was a submariner who fought in those same battles in the quiet service or the silent service. And then, of course, we'll review Senator McCain's service. But he has 2 sons that are also doing great service to our nation. One son joined the Marine Corps and is currently serving in the Army National Guard in Arizona and hopes to be an Apache pilot soon, while the other son is a graduate of the Naval Academy and is learning to fly Navy helicopters. And both have served in combat. As a naval officer, Senator McCain's father moved his family often. And in one of those homes, in his father's library, a 12-year-old John McCain discovered his favorite book, and that was Ernest Hemingway's For Whom the Bell Tolls. That book tells the story of a guy named Robert Jordan, a fictional American expatriate who fought in the Spanish Civil War. Robert Jordan leaves his home to support a cause that he held dear, and he abandoned all his comforts for a cause of greater importance than himself. Senator McCain said to me that reading this book changed his young life, and from that point forward, he aspired to Jordan's courage and nobility. I doubt that preteen John McCain had any idea how he would go on to display these characteristics consistently throughout his long life. John McCain left home in 1954 to join the family business. He left home to serve our nation, and he has not stopped since. At the Naval Academy, he freely admits to me that he enjoyed extracurricular activities as much as possible, and he graduated 5th from the bottom. But nevertheless, the Navy decided to take this risk taker and make him a naval aviator. But at flight school, he said he was more interested in reading history books than aviator manuals. But that passion for reading history is something that stayed with him all of his life, and he still learned the craft of naval aviation, graduating from flight training in 1960. He served in various positions and different types of aircraft over the next several years, and he continued to serve despite multiple brushes with death. In the summer of 1967, 50 years ago this past July, Lieutenant Commander McCain escaped fires and explosions on the deck of the aircraft carrier Forrestal, a tragedy that claimed the lives of 134 sailors. Senator McCain was determined to complete a full combat tour, and he and a few of his fellow pilots volunteered to transfer to the carrier Oriskany. Later that fall, in October 1967, he flew his A-4 Skyhawk from the deck of the Oriskany toward a target in Vietnam in a mission to strike the Hanoi thermal power plant. It was a calculated risk, a risk that Commander McCain begged his squadron operations officer to put him on. And most of you have heard at least the highlights of this story. And Senator McCain's Skyhawk was shot down over Hanoi that day. And he was captured, severely injured from his ejection of the A-4 Skyhawk. And he entered the now infamous Hanoi Hilton in the worst physical condition of any of the prisoners there. He endured months and years of continuous, uninterrupted torture and years of solitary confinement. When given the opportunity to escape that hell and return to the comforts of home with an offer of an early release from the North Vietnamese, John McCain refused. He refused release prior to those who had been held longer than he, and he endured many years more of abuse and torture, but he kept faith. He kept faith with his fellow prisoners. He kept faith with the Navy. He kept faith with the United States of America. And upon his release in 1973, 5.5 years later, he continued to serve our nation in the Navy until he retired in 1981. After retirement, he did not take up the comforts of retired life and go into the commercial sector, but he immediately began serving our nation in a different way, through public office. He won a congressional seat in Phoenix, Arizona in 1982 and served 2 terms in the House of Representatives. In 1986, the people of Arizona elected him into the Senate, and he became a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. In the 3 decades since, and as the SAS chairman since 2014, Senator McCain has been a loyal supporter of our military and a loyal supporter of our Army. And I can guarantee you he is a force to be reckoned with. He has consistently supported our Army in 2 major ways. First, Senator McCain ensures the readiness of our Army, our ability to fight tonight, by providing the resources we need to be ready. And secondly, he has been a consistent voice of reform through the SASC's oversight, and he's constantly pushing all of us to make us better. Reforms that he wants to make the Department of Defense and our Army more responsive to the needs of the President, the Secretary of Defense, the combatant commanders, and ultimately the American people. Senator McCain may have a Navy background, but he understands the contributions of all the services to the joint force, and he understands war, and he understands that winning in war requires soldiers and Marines to slug it out on the ground. He has tirelessly advocated for a larger ground force to meet our requirements around the world, including increased end strength for both Marines and Army. He has led efforts to reform our acquisition processes, including empowering myself and all the other service chiefs to enact the necessary acquisition changes. He's been a strong supporter of our plan to restructure the Army Modernization Command, to put all the various modernization components under one umbrella to establish that principle of war, unity of command. And he has encouraged us and supported us to redo the business of modernization and the processes of modernization for the Army. He has been a very strong supporter to get rid of the continuing resolutions and the Budget Control Act so that we can get some stability in our long-term predictable funding. Senator McCain has never wavered, and as SAS chairman, he has been bipartisan in everything he does. During hearings, when he needs to depart for a floor vote, he often hands the gavel not to the next Republican in line, but he hands it to Senator Reid, who is not only from the opposing political party, but he's also a graduate of the United States Military Academy. So Senator McCain is not only bipartisan politically, but he's bipartisan with the uniform you wear. And he's willing to work with both Democrats and West Point. And that's unusual, to be willing to work with both if it strengthens our national defense. And Senator Reid, thank you so much for being a great teammate to Senator McCain for so many years. But I can tell you for certainty, and in fact, I can tell you from the ride coming over here, Senator McCain does not go easy on the Department of Defense or on the general officers any of us, or flag officers in the Department of Defense. He takes his duties and responsibilities extraordinarily seriously. He knows that he has these soldiers' lives in his hands, and it is his duty to hold us who are wearing stars on our shoulders. It's his duty to hold us accountable, and he holds nothing back. He has questioned and at times sparred with all of us, political appointees, combatant commanders, and service chiefs. And thank God he does, because he gets the best out of us. He's not doing it for self-aggrandizement. He doesn't do it for praise or theater. Senator McCain cross-examines all of us for one simple reason. He wants us to be better. He knows that the Department of Defense, the Department of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Marines are all organizations that are inherently resistant to change. And he knows that we all need to be responsive to the President and the Congress and the American people. And he understands and demands that we respond to our soldiers and our soldiers' families. He himself has moved around the world and attended some 20 different schools during his own childhood. He has soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and all of their families as the first thought in his mind. All of these examples and countless more he does to make our Army, our Department of Defense, and this great nation stronger. All of that is an evidence of a life lived in service of a cause greater than himself. Which brings me back to Robert Jordan, Hemingway's hero. Jordan was brave and dedicated and capable and selfless. He risked his life, but never his honor. John McCain has time and again demonstrated those same characteristics of bravery, dedication, extremely capable, and selfless service. He has risked his life, he has risked his political standing, but never once did he compromise his honor. He told National Public Radio that the lessons he pulls from that novel all those decades ago as a young man was to maximize your time, care about the world, not just yourself. So, Senator, you have done just that throughout your entire life. You have lived a life that inspires everyone in this hall tonight to something greater, to selfless service and servant leadership. Thank you. Thank you for your lifetime of service to our nation. Thank you for all you have done for the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines. And we shall honor you tonight with the highest public service award the Army can grant you. But what we really do, and that's merely symbolic, what we really are here to do is to salute you and salute a life of selfless service to our country. Senator McCain, we salute you. Army strong.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated as we recognize the honoree, the Honorable John McCain. For outstanding service to the United States Army, veterans, soldiers, and their families, Senator John McCain is a tireless public servant, advancing congressional support for the Army to meet the rapidly evolving threats to our national security and ensuring soldiers have what they need to succeed. His work provides the resources soldiers need to fight and win on the battlefield today, and ensures the Army is poised to meet the challenges of the future. Chairman McCain has been integral to the Army, receiving the necessary resources to sustain the all-volunteer force and improve the quality of life for our soldiers, civilians, and families. A vigorous supporter of the U.S. Army,
He has overcome political challenges on the Army's behalf and regularly challenges the Army itself to be ready to respond to our nation's call. Senator McCain is a champion for the United States Army and for soldiers, their families, and veterans. His work will have a lasting, positive impact on our national defense for decades to come. Signed, Mark A. Milley, General, United States Army, Chief of Staff of the Army.
Well, thank you very much, General, for your kind words and the great honor that has been bestowed on me. It is undeserving, and if there's anyone that deserves credit, obviously it's those men and women that I've had the honor of serving with for well over 60 years. So I want to thank them for their inspiration, their leadership, and also the fact that they wanted to make sure that I would never let them down. I would like to recognize my teammate here on the Armed Services Committee. We work on a bipartisan basis despite Senator Reid's lack of education. I'd like to introduce my dear friend and comrade, Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island. Jack, would you? You know, they say that old line about if you want a friend in Washington, go out and buy a dog. But Jack and I have achieved things that we never would have been able to for the men and women who are serving if we hadn't have worked as teammates. So thank you, Jack, for your friendship and all the things you've done. I was thinking as General Milley was reviewing my storied career as to what I should say. And all I can tell you is that I believe that we should look to others to inspire us. If at one time, as General Milley mentioned, I was offered the opportunity to go home early. And the reason why I didn't is because I didn't want to let my fellow prisoners down and our leaders. So if I had a word of advice to my friends here serving in uniform, find role models. Find role models and be like them. And be aware that there is nothing more ennobling than serving a cause greater than oneself. And that's what I was just watching here. So I thank you for your service. I thank you for your sacrifice. I promise you after 60-some years, I'm not ready to quit. And by the way, when I graduated from the Naval Academy, I tried to get the Marine Corps, but my parents were married. And maybe you can, understand that. So I'm deeply honored. I will try to live up to your expectations of me. We have a lot more to do, and I thank you for being here tonight. Every person here had something else to do this evening, but you decided to come here, and for that, I am deeply, deeply grateful. Thank you, and God bless.
Less than a generation after the American Revolution, the Army was again called upon to defend our national sovereignty in the War of 1812. In battles that raged from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico, American soldiers endure and persevere as our nation's capital and the entire Chesapeake region was threatened in the summer of 1814. A small force of American soldiers and militia endured a horrific 24-hour bombardment from an invading British Army and fleet at Fort McHenry near Baltimore, Maryland.
Make ready. Take aim. Fire. Advance. Fire locks. We've been under constant attack for the last 2 days. The enemy has pressed us hard, and they've been shelling Fort McHenry almost nonstop. But the men endure the horrors of battle and the bombardment like veterans. The courage and strength of the regular soldiers and the militia remains unbroken despite the hardships. We have a bond. We trust each other and our officers, and we know we will prevail. This morning at dawn, the fort's commander ordered an enormous flag to be raised to show the enemy that we will not be defeated. They say it can be seen for miles. And that flag is our nation's symbol, our badge of honor, and it will not be lowered for this or for any foe.
Over 200 years ago, our national anthem was born as Francis Scott Key observed our glorious flag continuing to fly over the ramparts at Fort McHenry. Please rise and join in singing the Star-Spangled Banner.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. America's Army played a pivotal role in shaping the early republic, but in 1860, clouds of war gathered once again on the horizon. During 4 bloody years of civil war, brave soldiers from both sides of a divided nation fought and suffered in battles that raged in places called Shiloh, Antietam, Gettysburg, and the Wilderness. Over 600,000 American soldiers died in the war between the states as brothers fought brothers to deter the fate of the country.
I was there in the winter of '64 when we camped in the ice at Nashville's door. 300 miles our trail had led. We barely had time to bury our dead. When the Yankees charged and the colors fell, Overton Hill was a living hell. When we called retreat, it was almost dark. I died with a grape shot in my heart. Say a prayer for peace, for every fallen son. Set my spirit free. Let me lay down my gun. Sweet Mother Mary, I'm so tired, but I can't come home till the last shot's fired.
At Five Forks we could see the end. Lee's broken army would never mend. They fought with courage from Danville's hills, surviving on little but water and will. They never lost courage, they never lost fight. Toward Appomattox they moved in the night, when the generals met to put an end to war, and brother found brother together once more. Say a prayer for peace, for every fallen son. Set our spirit free. Let us lay down our gun. Sweet Mother Mary, we're so tired, but we can't come home till the last shot's fired. Till the last shot's fired. Till the last shot's fired. Till the last shot's fired.
The peace achieved in April 1865 at Appomattox, Virginia, ended the Civil War and allowed America and the Army to continue moving ever westward. America's small frontier army evolved into a larger and more complex fighting force that would first appear on the world stage in the Spanish-American War. Then, in 1917, the Army was called upon to deploy massive formations overseas to defeat the armies of the German Kaiser in World War I. This year, as we commemorate the centennial of America's entry into the war, we recall the vicious trench warfare that raged across the battlefields of Western Europe, where American soldiers stood side by side with our allies, bringing about a victory in what became known as the Great War. Sergeant Alvin C. York, one of the war's greatest soldiers and recipients of the Medal of Honor, reflect on what was accomplished.
There are those who ask, you fought to make the world safe for democracy. What did it get you? Well, let me answer them now. It's not important what I got personally, but what we, as a nation and an army, achieved. By joining with our allies and gaining victory in this here war, we won a lease on liberty, but not a deed to it. We fought for the right of people to be free. Americans have always fought for that right. If we've stopped, then we owe the memory of George Washington an apology. For if we've stopped, then he and his men wasted their time at Valley Forge. Liberty and freedom and democracy are prizes awarded only to those people who fight to win them and then are ready to keep fighting eternally to hold on to them.
Though World War I has also been called the war to end all wars, Less than a generation after the conflict that forces of tyranny and oppression again threatened our country and her allies in the Second World War. For 4 years, American soldiers and millions of men and women on the home front fought and worked together to decisively defeat the Axis powers around the globe. American soldiers stormed across the plains of Europe and assaulted island fortresses throughout the Pacific to stop the Japanese advance. Despite fanatic resistance by the enemy, American soldiers would emerge victorious in both European and Pacific theaters in 1945. The peace that so many had fought and died for in World War II lasted just a few short years. In June 1950, the Cold War turned hot as American forces joined with the United Nations to resist communist aggression in Korea. Many American soldiers called to duty were veterans of World War II. Among them was Sergeant First Class Stanley Adams, who would be awarded the Medal of Honor in Korea and would go on to serve in the Army until 1970.
I spent 2 years in North Africa and Italy fighting the Nazis. I'd seen enough of war, but I enjoyed being a soldier and I stayed on. I was on peacekeeping duty in Japan when this Korean action kicked off, and it caught us a little short at first. But me and my men, we've got together now, and we've driven the communists back, fought hard with our allies to save this country. I know my experience in leadership has made a difference, helped these men survive some tough situations. God only knows how long this fight against the communists will last, but I'll stay with my men as long as they need me.
Less than a decade after the end of hostilities in Korea, the Army was called upon to confront our nation's enemies in Southeast Asia. The Vietnam War was our nation's longest conflict before the campaign in Afghanistan. More than 58,000 Americans lost their lives in Vietnam. 1,617 Americans remain unaccounted for and are never forgotten. The men and women of our Army fought in incredible challenging conditions but never wavered in their courage and commitment to the nation and each other.
I'm on my third tour here in Vietnam. This is a tough fight in a whole lot of ways. My A-team has done everything, from providing medical care to villagers up in the Central Highlands to advising and fighting alongside the Vietnamese. I knew from the time I was a kid I was going to be in the Army, a career soldier, just like my dad. When I graduated the Special Forces course and my father put this green beret on me, I knew I was an expert in my profession. I was proud then, and I'm prouder now of what us soldiers are doing here in Nam.
This is the hardest work I've done in my life. Every day I watch dozens of casualties come through my hospital. Some we can patch up and send back to the units. Most come clinging to life, and there are many who just don't make it. My mom asked me how I can keep taking this, and I'm not sure what to say. But I know what I'm doing is my calling, not just to be a nurse, but to be a soldier. Our country is pouring a lot of resources into Vietnam, and the most important ones are the men and women who wear this uniform. I just want to do my part and care for them the best I can.
Man, when I got my draft notice a year ago, I was stunned. I never dreamed of being in the Army, but before I knew it, I completed basic training and found myself lugging this machine gun through the jungle in some nasty heat and humidity. Our battles with the enemy are just brutal, but our troops are more than a match for the Viet Cong. I lost some good friends, but it's comforting to know we're not in this alone. No matter what happens, I know my soldiers always have my back. Soldiering out here, it is difficult, but the soldiers in my unit serve with honor, and when my tour is finished, I can go home with my head high.
In the post-Vietnam era, thousands of American soldiers continue to serve the nation both in and out of uniform, truly soldiers for life. They helped transform America's Army into an all-volunteer force that became the world's most professional and capable military team. Since the birth of our nation, American soldiers have always committed to a professional ethic of values, possess unquestionable character, and are highly competent. The drill team is the embodiment of these qualities. Members of the drill team are from all corners of the United States with a wide range of specialties. They have perfected their mission and are here to share it with you today. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Army Drill Team. Today, the drill team is commanded by Captain Nathan Lease from Denver, Colorado. The drill team represents today's soldiers as well as yesterday's heroes who proudly fought in the Revolutionary War and continue to serve in the hills of Afghanistan, throughout the Middle East, Europe, and Korea. Today, the Army has more than 187,000 soldiers forward deployed in over 140 countries around the world. And now, the most difficult maneuver of all. The soldiers will continue to march as members from the front rank toss their rifles into the air over the formation to be caught by the soldiers in the rear rank. This is again an exercise in trust, as each member will have to put their safety in the hands of their brothers in arms. This is the United States Army Drill Team's signature maneuver since 1958. The front to rear overhead rifle toss. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the ambassadors for today's Army, yesterday's heroes, and tomorrow's soldiers, our United States Army Drill Team. Battle-tested soldiers and leaders emerged from Vietnam. Determined to bring about change in our Army, they created a highly professional, all-voluntary Army that was superbly trained and expertly led. Throughout the last 2 decades of the 20th century, American soldiers conducted combat and humanitarian peacekeeping missions in places like Grenada, Panama, Somalia, Haiti, and the Balkans. In 1990, America's Army, working side by side with joint and coalition partners, defeated the Iraqi military in just 100 hours of ground combat. Since September 11, 2001, the men and women of your Army have maintained a high state of readiness. American soldiers remain decisively engaged, taking the fight to our enemies around the globe in concert with America's other armed services and our allies.
My name is Specialist Matthew Pierce from Godwin, North Carolina. I am an American soldier. I am a warrior and a member of a team. I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values. For 242 years, soldiers have served our nation during times of profound change and conflict. The one constant is our values: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Values that will continue to inspire our soldiers for the next 242 years.
I am Specialist Tadrika Wallace from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and proficient in my warrior tasks and drills. I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself. These soldiers reflect our warrior ethos: tough, disciplined, talented, and proud of our heritage.
My name is Specialist Brad Stone from Charleston, South Carolina. I am an expert and I am a professional. I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America in close combat. I do not do this because I have to. I do it because this nation needs me. I'm a guardian of freedom and the American way of life. I am an American soldier. And we are Army Strong.
Now taking the floor are elements of your United States Army. Please rise and join in the singing of the Army Song.
March along, sing a song with the army of the free. Count the brave, count the true, who have fought to victory. We're the army and proud of our name. We're the army and proudly proclaim. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. Then it's hi, hi, hey, the army's on its way. Count off the cadence loud and strong, for wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along.
It has been a pleasure for the United States Army to have presented Salute from the Chief. Our soldiers will remain on the floor and available to answer your questions and pose for photographs. Thank you for coming out to help us honor our distinguished awardee and the selfless service of American soldiers past and present. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Army Strong!